Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining. My name is Hayat Sulam. I'm the Chief Exec of the Royal Academy of Engineering, and it's my very great pleasure to have with me today the phenomenal Ursula Burns, CEO of Xerox from 2009 to 2016, Chair of Xerox from 2010 to 2017, Chair of Vion from 2017 to 2020, Leader of the STEM Programme for the Obama administration, as well as Head of his President's Export Council. It is no wonder that Ursula has appeared regularly on the Forbes and Fortune Most Powerful Women lists. And Ursula remains as active as ever, having recently published her memoir and serving as a senior advisor at Teneo and board director for a whole raft of organizations, including Uber, ExxonMobil, Nestle, MIT, and the Ford Foundation. Ursula, thank you so much for joining us.
I am really thrilled to be here. I was introduced to the Royal Academy a while ago. And have been kind of floating around the edges. And when I moved to the UK in 2017, I decided that, yeah, this is time to kind of dive in a little bit deeper. And so I'm really happy to be able to serve.
Fantastic. And we're looking forward to having the conversation around themes to do with inclusion and leadership. So I think we should start with something that I picked up from your excellent memoir, which was that your mother was obviously a really key influence in your life. So please, Ursula, tell us, how did your mother influence the leader that you ultimately became?
Yeah, this is so hard to do sincerely, right? Because everyone, I hope, has wonderful mothers who they love and who take care of them. And so my mother was all of that. Typical loving individual, loving parent. But she was even more than that. She was a molder of me, particularly of me, my brother and my sister as well, but I was as the middle child, the one who was the closest to her, around her for the most. And she was, I call her a maniacal parent. We grew up in a really tough place. We were the typical poor immigrant family, Black family, growing up in literally the ghetto of the Lower East Side of New York City. And if you lived there, you were used to just poverty and bad acting and drugs and a whole bunch of stuff. My mother didn't have any of that. She tried to eliminate it from our world totally, but she couldn't because we had to leave the house. So when she was around us in her sphere, there was control, there was love, there was high expectations, there was certainty about certain things, even though she wasn't certain, right? She wasn't certain where the next meal would come from. We got very little of that pressure on us. She kept it all to her. She was a quite remarkable person. Of course, when I was growing up, did I realize this? No. No, but as I got older, I did. And so the fundamental question that you asked is, how did she influence the leader I eventually became? She is the foundation for every thing. It's so funny how I think back now, how I act, how I speak, how I approach problems and issues, it's my mother. It's all my mother. Even some of my sayings, it's all my mother. The title of the book, it's my mother saying. So she was a remarkable lady, and I was so blessed and lucky to have her as a parent.
That is so moving to hear, Ursula. And actually, you referenced the title of your book, and I wanted to ask you a bit more about that, because it's clear from what you said and what from reading the book, that you really did grow up in a very different place to the world that you now inhabit. And your memoir is called "Where You Are Is Not Who You Are," and as you said, that's a phrase that came from your mother. Tell us what your mother meant by that, and also, when she was saying this to you when you were a child, did you believe it? Did you understand it?
Yeah, I was the typical, I'll answer the second part first. I had no clue what was going on. She would say these things. She said, where you are is not who you are. And remember that when you're rich and famous. That was one of the things. My mother had no idea what rich and famous meant. I mean, in the context of today, you can look it up on the internet. This is the 1960s and 70s. There was no internet. There were no cell phones. It was just like, so she said she had a way about her in saying, she said another thing is, God doesn't like ugly. She would say, you have to, the measure of you is going to be whether you leave behind more than you take away. All kinds of instances. And the book was essentially a tribute to her, but a tribute to help, broadly to help. I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
So you did, and I think that the values that she imparted have really come across so strongly. And now, as the CEO of the Royal Academy of Engineering, I can't resist having a little detour into the engineering side of this. So bear with me. I would love to ask you about what led you into engineering, and to talk a bit about what you think the impact of that was, that background, that rooting in engineering. What was the impact, the significance of that for your subsequent roles, especially in senior leadership?
Yeah, I'm going to answer the second part first again. Engineering saved me. Engineering made me who I am today. I literally lucked into it. I lucked into engineering. I had no idea what the heck an engineer did. The only time I ever thought of an engineer was I thought that those were the people who drove trains. That's what they call them. And I got into engineering by luck, by happenstance. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about engineering now and about why I worked with the Obama administration and some of the work I do now is because you shouldn't have to luck into this field, which it's a transformative field, particularly if you're a woman or an underrepresented minority. But I got there because I was good at math. I went to an all-girl Catholic high school. The foundations for math were pretty basic. We didn't have a lot of advanced math classes. We had none of the stuff that, a lot of these special schools had. The good news is we had unbelievable discipline in school. Basic writing, reading, arithmetic, the understanding of how you read for comprehension, how you learn, how you practice. That's what the school taught us. But the regular, calculus classes, we didn't have any of that stuff. But in the United States, you have to take a test that's called a SAT, the Scholastic, I think it's called Scholastic Aptitude Test, SATs. And there's a test before it that's called a PSAT, the pre-test. It's a year before. I took this test when I was in high school, and I did fairly well on the PSAT. Now, fairly well for the PSAT is poor for, it's relatively poor. You would never be able to get into a MIT or a Harvard with the scores that I had. But what it showed the teachers and my guidance counselor who came in was that I had, even with a little low amount of help from the school, I had a basic aptitude for this. And I was told by the guidance counselor who came to our school and visited, because we didn't have one who lived, who was in the school, that, you should think about becoming an actuary, which is a, mathematician kind of a person. And my teachers had told me I could become a teacher or a nurse. And so I went to the library and looked up, what do you do with math? What do you do with math? And the number one job that was posted in this book that was called the Barron's book is chemical engineering. If you have a strong foundation in math, you can go into chemical engineering. And chemical engineering had the highest pay after 4 years of college. So I decided that I was going to become a chemical engineer. That's literally it. I had no idea what a chemical engineer did. I'd never met one. I'd never spoken to one. And so I went down this path of just maniacally focused on becoming a chemical engineer. Long story short, got to college, hated chemistry, hated it with a passion, and was about ready to leave school because I didn't have enough foundations on what do you do? Do you change majors? We didn't know anything about that. Went to I went to school on a program, the college on a program for people who were not quite ready to go to college. So it was like how do you call it? It was a underachievers kind of entry program, literally, so they gave you tutors to help you on all of the stuff that you needed help on. It's called Higher Education Opportunity Program, HEOP. And I had a counselor, therefore, and she said, oh, you don't have to leave school. You just have to go into a different major. She looked at what I was good at. She said, mechanical engineering is for you. and I switched to mechanical engineering, which wasn't hard because I was only a freshman, so it didn't make that much of a difference. And the rest is history. So I got into mechanical engineering by accident. Fortunately, I got there because I loved it. It was exactly my personality. I'm very organized. I like some levels of certainty. I love problem solving and then improving. So and that's what engineers do. The impact on on who I am is, I say this all the time, everything I do, people say to me, you're definitely an engineer. You're definitely an engineer. Leading a company, I lead it with a foundation that there has to be a process that's orderly, that you can understand. That process can be improved. It can be automated. It can be taught to others. It can be documented. Everything about me is an engineer. It's hard to avoid. Even if you come to my house, you would see that I have a visual way of processing things that an engineer can do to keep order, to keep organization. So it's amazing how I was lucky to fall into this career that was perfect for me. And it's by luck. And I became passionate about not having people have to get to this point by luck. Suppose nobody, suppose you didn't have the counselor. Suppose you did, you just wouldn't know. So
yeah, thank heavens you didn't listen to that initial careers advice.
oh yeah. Some of them were out of the question. I mean, none was out of the question. I wouldn't have fit that mold at all. Nurse, definitely not. I was considering teaching, but when you think about, at least in America, and at that time for sure, even now, the salary ranges for teachers, it was so low that one of the things I was passionate about as well was making sure my mother had, by this time I realized how much struggle she was having in her life and in our life, keeping us safe and healthy and well fed, that I wanted to actually get to a place where I could help her. And if I were a teacher, it would have been hard for me to do that.
Well, it's very interesting to hear the motivations that led you in engineering to bump into each other. Do you think that it's an advantage to be an engineer when you're leading a technology or engineering-based business?
I think it's an advantage to be an engineer if you're leading just about any business. Now, like, I'm biased, right? And the only point that I know from is engineering, right? I mean, I wasn't anything else ever. I mean, I was I worked, even when I was a college intern, I worked in engineering fields. And I think that the discipline, the possibility, what engineering does, any of the disciplines, sub-disciplines in engineering, is it presents you with problems or opportunities, and then it asks you to help solve the problem. And the way that it asks the question is, it presents it like there is an answer here, right? There is a possibility here, there is an answer. So I approach most problems like there is an answer here. And it also tells you, engineering teaches you that you can do that, things are iterative, right? So that you can do it once, you figured it out, the bridge doesn't fall. Then the next bridge that you see, some other person thought of a different way of doing it. And so it's an iterative process that you can kind of iterate yourself to perfection. I think it's really good as a leader to have as a foundation this idea that there are solutions to problems, that it's really important that you do some iteration. Don't expect to hit the ball out the park the first time. And another thing it teaches you very clearly is that teams, you generally, in mechanical engineering for sure, I had a lot of work in civil engineering as well, unique teams, because people specialize in, so it teaches you all of the fundamental tools that are so key to leadership and business. So I think it's a great foundational field for most people to be in.
It's a very enabling mindset for a leader, I think.
Exactly, it's a possibilities mindset.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you a little bit about your experience of being an African-American woman in incredibly prominent roles. In 2009, when you were appointed CEO of Xerox, you became the first African-American woman to hold a position like that at a Fortune 500 company. And a huge amount, understandably, was made about you are an exception, you have broken through. There's a kind of special category for Ursula Burns. And you said that, in a way, some of that troubled you. You don't see yourself as a unicorn in terms of your intelligence, your education, your sponsorship. So I'd love to hear from you. What are the broader lessons that we should be learning from your experience? And have we been asking the right questions about that?
I think that one of the things that really started to grind on me a little bit was this idea that I was told, even before I was CEO, as I was coming up, being introduced to more people, um, and more situations, and higher, more complex situations, and more prominent people, that the way that I was received into the fold was with a level of, you are unbelievably special. It's amazing. It's amazing that you are here. You are, the current vernacular would be, a unicorn. And what I realized in the beginning, I felt uncomfortable about this because I know a lot of people, um, that have as good education as I have connections. I mean, most of the CEOs that I know, just about all the CEOs that I know, went to college, got degrees. Some of them got degrees in engineering. I was not that special. The only thing that was different about me was that I didn't have the gender that they have, and I didn't have the ethnicity that they had. And so what I realized was my accomplishment I didn't leap a tall building in a single bound. I didn't create this massive I didn't do anything special. The only thing special was that people were not used to seeing someone who looked like me in the role. And that, I realized, is more about them than it is about me, right? It's about a society that does not enable, particularly in developed economies, the UK, the US, most of the developed economies, does not, France, name them all, does not expect to see an African person, African heritage person who is a woman accomplish as much. So they have taught themselves to believe that we are one step behind them. And it's not, and my difference was that I was with them. It was not, the only difference was that I didn't happen to, that I had the wrong gender, wrong. So it became clear to me that this was not about me. They were saying how special I was to justify me being in the room. Because if they didn't say I was special, then there should be a lot more of me in the room. Why are there not more women? Why are there not more people of color engaged here? If you look at the structures of education, the structures of corporations, government, banking, the structures were built by men, white men. They are governed by white men. The referees are white men. And the reason why they're not more of me, people who look like me or people who look like you, is not us only not aspiring to be there. It's them not breaking the system apart, taking some of the cement around it away so that we can actually enter. And that's where when I realized that, yeah, Ursula, that's why you feel uncomfortable being called special, because you're not. There are many smart women, people who could be engineers. There are many smart African Americans or Blacks who can be engineers. We just are not incited, motivated, even taught about that as a possibility.
Okay, so we'll come back to a little bit more about that. I mean, the distribution of talent versus distribution of opportunity is definitely a part of this. But I would like to still ask you, personally, you have been visibly, inescapably different from so many of your peers and colleagues throughout your career. How did you go about handling that? That sense of differentness is unavoidable, and so especially when you were establishing yourself in your career, how did you deal with this?
It's such a great question, and it is it takes a lot to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah.
I have always been a loner. I've always been an introvert, even though if you're around me, you would say, oh my goodness, I am very, very comfortable. And my kids are this way as well, in my own skin and alone. I can stay in my house all day and I wouldn't want to do this every day, but not interact. I don't need a lot of input to motivate me. I don't need a lot of external input. That personality quirk turned out to be very, very helpful. I realized early, when I was in college for sure, when I went to work, absolutely, that there was no one who looked like me, that there was no one who came from the same background as I did, and that I was not friends with these people. Not that I was not friendly with them, but I was not friends. All of my friends who understand who I was, who were people from my neighborhood, my old girlfriends, still to this day. So it became clear to me that I had no responsibility and that I would not be successful trying to fit in by conforming or becoming them. You know what I mean? I didn't want to contort myself to try to look like, the white men or the white women or whatever the hell, to try to act like, to try to like the things that they like. Not that I hated the things that they liked, but it was not relevant to me. So I was able to stay out on the edges. Now there's a problem to this. Hayatan, there's a big problem, and I'll get to this, and women deal with it a lot, right? But I was comfortable being the only one. I was really comfortable. And early on, when I realized that I was pretty smart, my mother used to tell me all the time, there's one thing, she said, Max, my middle name is Maxine, she called me Max, you are you are often wrong, but you are the strongest wrong person I've ever met. So she said to me, you're wrong and strong. And what I was taught to do when I was younger was to actually articulate what I thought. And sometimes it was, as my mother said, it was bad. But at least people knew that I had a point of view, and I got educated by that. I literally would say, that's not the way it is. And we would get into an argument or a debate or positively, and I would change my mind and learn, or they would change their mind and learn, or whatever. That fundamental back and forth, everything about my personality was one where I had to kind of do it alone. I don't mean that my book is about help. The entire book is about the fact that I got to where I was because every step of the way, someone helped me. That's my mother in the beginning. When I was in college, all these programs that were put in place to help me. When I was at work, I literally had people saying, try this, do this, help. So it's not about people not helping me and me being alone in the corner. It's about me being extremely comfortable with certain things about who I am. I'm very comfortable that I am Black, prefer that to anything other choice. I am extremely comfortable that I'm a woman. And I think that the combination of those two things make me significantly more valuable. It's a rare asset. It is a strength, I say this all the time to women in engineering. Do you know how you are in a room at the Royal Academy speech thing? If you raise your hand in that room, now it's changing a little bit. I almost assure you, if you're a woman, they'll spot you because you are unique. I use that. I didn't see that as a detriment. I saw that as a positive for me. It was like, wow, people kind of knew that I was in the room.
Yeah.
People worry because there's an expectation, but I was never really that shy about my capabilities. I figured, hey, I studied well, I got great grades in college, so I figured, and I was around these men all the time who studied well and got great grades in college. So I was never really concerned about my aptitude. The biggest thing would be that most women should be worried about is their ability to conform. And I say, don't conform too much. I just didn't, I just thought it was a strength. So I just lucked out. Everything about my life is this, it all fell together. Luck is opportunity and preparedness, right? So I had the opportunity, and fortunately, was prepared all the time to kind of switch it around. I've had a lot of bad times. I am often alone, right? Because I live in a world and I manage my world in such a way that I don't let people in very close to it. That's a problem. That's a problem, and in COVID, it's a real problem, right? It's a problem. So, but the problem I have to deal with, the opportunity I deal with as well, which is that people know, they walk down the street and they go, yeah, there's a Black woman. If I'm in the engineering society, when I was on the board, CEO meetings, so we have these business roundtable meetings, literally, The president would walk in, it didn't matter who the president was, the room is full of CEOs, and invariably they scan the room and they stop right at you because, literally because you're the only one that looks like you. So I think it's something that we should actually pay attention to and not and use it as a positive.
That's a super empowering message. I think often the friction of being different starts to wear people down, and you've shown us it can be the polish. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, it can be the polish. That's exactly right. It can be the polish.
So, so as well as experiencing that personally, you actually through your career have worked across many different communities, geographies, different parts of society, from thinking about the collaborations with Japan and your roles at Xerox through to working with the unions when you were seeking to transform Xerox's fortunes during those tough years in the early noughties, through to managing relationships with activist shareholders. So what did you learn from all those experiences that can help all of us to create more inclusive cultures and outcomes, especially when we have to bridge these divided communities?
And I tell you, the title of my book is a lot of what I learned. We particularly when you get into positions of leadership, you're there now. At the core of it, we are just all people. And some of us has reached, some of us are actors, but we're all people. And we cannot lose sight of the fact that because we are in a position of power or influence doesn't make us a better person, a more important person than the other person. That was my mother's thing. And who you are, where you are, so this position of CEOs is not who you are. And so same thing, if this person is quote unquote, a subordinate of yours, they're not subordinate to you as a human. And so one of the ways that I was able to deal with, the difference was amazing, was I tried to take it from the most, hey guys, let's talk about it from a basic language. This is what I'm interested in. This is what the company is interested in. Let's just kind of peel it all back so we can understand, or please you tell me what you're interested in and what your affiliations are interested in. And in the union, it was this was a great reaffirming example for me. The union leader was a great guy. We had very little in common, but he was a nice man. We had a huge amount of conflict potential because we're trying to lower the number of employees in the company, and they are, as a union, they're trying to keep the number the same or increase it. And the way that this normally turns out is that you just get into a fight. That's it. You say, this is what I want. They say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to strike. Well, you just get into a fight. My approach, by the way, not totally unique, but the approach that I had was, let's first make sure that this man, who I kind of thought was reasonably smart, he had earned his position, he was reasonably, spoke, understood, etc., kind of knew business. I'm going to give you all the data, all the information that I have. I'm going to explain to you the position of this entity that we both work for. And you help me understand we are running out of money really, really quickly. If we can, and I said to him, you and I, we will always be able to get a job. I mean, you'll go to another union, I'll go to another company, whatever. But we have tens of thousands of employees who don't have that level of flexibility. Let's talk about the problem. So I try to, whenever I engage, let's try to figure out what it is we're trying to do before we get into all of the personality. The personality does come into play, for sure, but it's not the problem. It is not the major thing. The discussion has to be about the thing that we're trying to work on, not about whether I like you or trust you, or which is what it becomes. So I try not to conform, which is interesting because I was just thinking about this. It's not conforming. It's just, we're in the same place here. We're trying, and let's just make sure we can kind of get to a solution.
Yeah, so it's a combination of that alignment behind shared outcomes, yes, and keeping humanity at the heart of it.
Keeping humanity at the heart of it is so amazing.
Yeah, I completely recognise that. So let's talk a little bit more about corporate life at the moment. So there's been, as you know, a lot of concern in recent years about the tech industry in particular, but probably relates to much of engineering design as well, embedding bias in AI algorithms, in product design and so forth. How well do you think the tech industry is doing at the moment in terms of making that shift towards designing and innovating for more inclusive outcomes from the products and services that it sells and markets?
Poorly.
Mm-hmm.
But at least on a path to improvement, because we are aware that we're doing poorly.
Okay.
It's kind of like, first you have to realize that there is a problem.
Yeah.
First we do. It is surprising that we are surprised that the tech industry is embedding bias in the algorithms, because the people who are designing the algorithms are biased. So are we. You and I. The reason why we don't leave so much power to a single type of person is because they are biased. Biased by their experiences, but that's what bias is not necessarily horrible. Doing nothing about it is something that's really horrible. So the tech industry, definitely white, almost 100% male, and we said to them, please, we didn't say this to them, but they took on the role of designing face recognition software, designing logic, letting people in or out based on a set of traits that this person has. And guess what they did? They designed it with their biases in mind. They didn't even think about it as biases. They designed it from their reality. Their reality is biased. Your reality is biased. My reality is biased. The reason why we want a lot of different people in the room, the reason why we want a diverse and inclusive team is because we've proven over history that if you leave it to one single group, there is another set of groups that they actually don't know about, don't include, don't like or respect, or whatever. We have to actually change this. With the good news, back to the original question, is that at least we are aware that this is a problem. We still haven't done enough to fix it. If you think about leadership, governance structures of companies, we just did a report that in the United States came out 3 days ago on PE and so private equity and venture capital firms, and who leads these things. It's amazing.
Yeah.
They are white and they are male. Period. And so what do you expect to come out? A set of habits, biases towards white males, not because they're mean and ugly, but because they don't know anything about the other people.
Yeah, and I think actually that this point that you've made around biases everywhere in all of us, and you cannot actually get rid of it, is quite profound. It drives a kind of humility in terms of what we all bring to the table, and the point is you need that diversity of voices, thinking, experience in an environment where you get the best out of that. So that's why we need more inclusion. And you have a great vantage point. You sit on all these different boards with Exxon, Uber, MIT, TNIP, or you advise them if you don't sit on them. But can you see these boards, and I'm not expecting you to name names, but the boards that you're working closely with, are they at the point where they have fully embraced the business case for inclusion?
I think there's one that has, but it's not a profit-making organization. That's the Ford Foundation. Not surprisingly, the Ford Foundation has absolutely embraced the business case for inclusion. Absolutely. And even though we have to improve because we have a blind spot here or a blind spot there, we know that we have to figure, oh my God, there's a potential for a blind spot. Less abled people or differently abled people is a place that we're like, oh my goodness, look at our board. We don't have anybody around who can actually give us that point of view. So they have done a good job. Their role is to be that role model. Companies, I tell you, I am on a really good day, I'm optimistic. And on a not so good day, I'm neutral to pessimistic. Why? Because I think that right now everybody's going through the motions. You can't not go through the motions. All companies are talking about women and bringing them in and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Everybody says it now. Literally, look at, if you use the word, before it used to be, if you use the word cloud computing, you got an investment. Now, if everything you say has to be watch it, read it. Everybody has diversity, equity, and inclusion, something. There are commercials about it, so on and so on. We are at the point now where a lot of the efforts are window dressing.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some companies that are making progress, good progress. Uber is one. Uber is one that I often speak about Uber because it's not what you would expect to hear. This is a company that has made just amazing amount of progress under a great leader, a really strong leader in this area, to kind of open up their eyes, his eyes, to be more inclusive, more broad, and to design that, try to help design that in the company. Far from fixed, far from fixed. But he's a person who is leaning into it. But most companies aren't. I have to say they aren't.
So you cited some stats around diversity of leadership in private equity and venture capital. That the report from Deloitte and Alliance for Diversity showed that the 82.5% of board seats at Fortune 500 companies are held by people who are white. It's not that there isn't a business case out there. Why is it taking so long to deliver meaningful change? And do you support the introduction of diversity quotas? The NASDAQ board diversity policy. Where are you in all that?
I am. I say often, I'll say it again here, that it's not surprising that it's taken a long time. There has been no real impetus. Shareholders didn't give a hoot about it. I mean, the people who put money into companies didn't even ask the question. Right now, at least we're asking the question, and why did we pollute the world? Because people who invest didn't think it was a big deal. So now ESG is a big. So that's one. The other one is when you have power, it's really difficult to give it up, particularly when power is kind of nice. And literally sitting in all these seats, in the beginning, we would talk to people about board diversity, and we would get the response is, well, I don't know if these guys were willing to give up their seats. I would say they own the seats. It's interesting. You actually believe that these seats are their seats. And it's that fundamental, that the right, the standard, the right way to do it is that way. And we are going to give you a piece of what we own, what belongs to us. The fact of the matter is it doesn't. It doesn't belong to them, and it's not their seats. And I think until it's going to continue to be a struggle until it's going to continue to be a struggle. So we have to continue to push, because there's no real reason for people to just give it up. Shareholders have to push. They have to ask the questions. They have to have rules. Like NASDAQ just said, if you're going to be on ours, you have to. So that's what. Do I believe in quotas? I was a firm non-quota person. And we tried everything, including everything. Guess what I believe in? Quotas. And I say now that I say the following: quotas are the punishment that overseers give to companies when they fail to do the right thing. When we have said for years and years and years, let's get off of Black people first. We said women, it's half the population. If you look at who's graduating from colleges, my goodness, more women. Let's keep going. We see them all over the place. There's not like a dearth of them. There are lots. They're graduating from college, they're getting trained. Get them on your board. Oh yeah, okay, we'll think. And then California and Europe, right? UK and Europe said, okay, no longer up to you. We need a third of the people on there. Guess what happened? All of these board seats got filled because they would tell us in the past there's not a lot of people skilled. They got filled with the right proportion, the legally required proportion of women. Mostly, unfortunately, all of these women are white women, which is a problem because that points out, I think, very clearly that the race gap is very, very different, right? But all these people are women. Last I checked, no companies failed because they had 3 female directors. They didn't make less money because they had 3 female directors. Surprise, surprise. They were there. They're capable of doing the work. We have to just let them into the place that they have the right to be. And without quotas, it takes too long. We've been right now without a absolute push. I believe that companies will take too long to do the right thing.
So that's so interesting. Quotas are part of that law of the universe that you get what you deserve.
You
but
get what deserves.
So Ursula, you of course are famous for walking the walk, and you yourself are setting up a new private equity firm, Integrum Holdings. So tell us more about how that's going to contribute to one of the things that you've also talked about, which is inclusive capitalism. I'd love to know more about it, please.
Yeah, so let me talk about inclusive capitalism first, right? I am a capitalist. I actually have not totally squared all of the aspects of capitalism around humanism and humanity yet, but I do know, so I haven't kind of like looked at them and figured out how to do it, but I do know it's doable. I absolutely know it's doable. I also know what doesn't work. What doesn't work is the model that we are using in the world today. How do I know it doesn't work? We have, and I'm gonna get away from the world and I'm gonna use the United States, right? We have 1% or less now since the pandemic of the population in this country, in that country, I'm now in the UK, so literally controls what, 80 something percent of the, it is an unfathomable thought. And these people, this 1% look the same. They look the same. They are generally white and they are almost always men. So they're white men. The swing between people who live on the edge and the people who have so much that they don't know what to do with, that small group and that very, very large group was not the design or the plan for capitalism. Capitalism was not designed to make 3 people rich and millions of them literally sustenance living levels. That's not the design. So we messed it up along the way. We messed it up. It's out of kilter. I'm not blaming anybody who lives on the planet today. We were born into this system. But where we are today is that we should know, and I think we do know, that it's not working the way that I think it was intended to work. Inclusive capitalism is around bringing more people along for the good ride that very, very, very few people participate in today. There is no reason why in America you work 40 hours a week and you don't make enough money to maintain yourself and your family. That can't be the outcome of you've done what you're supposed to do. Whatever it is, you go to the Walmart store, you go to the Xerox factory, whatever you do, you hustle through, you do your thing, you get home, and you literally live on the edge for your entire life. There's no reason for that. Inclusive capitalism is to try to build a capitalist structure that is more human, that's significantly more respectful of the individual versus capital. Respect, and all of our law, we have to think about our laws. Our tax laws value capital over people, right? You just, US tax laws, I don't know what the UK tax laws, except that you take a lot of money from us, from me, by the way, but we have to change it. We have to change it. It's not sustainable. We see the cracks forming all over the world. We see the cracks forming in America where people literally, they're opting out. They are acting up. They are not motivated to be a part of a system because the system is not good for them. So that's inclusive capital is about that. Integrum is all about, I've been on the outside of this sphere, watching it, being kind of fascinated by it, helping a lot of companies who are in it, PE, early stage companies, a lot of work with CEOs, et cetera, of small companies, of startups. And I know a lot of the systems around, and myself and 2 other partners met a while ago and we started to talk about our next lives. We all have more money than you could, we have enough money. So it's not about that. And we decided that we started with another idea that we would do like a family office for people who are poor, right? Because rich people have these family offices. We do a family office for people who are poor, and the financial model for that doesn't work. And that we met one of the key people. His name is Tagar Olson, who's a crackerjack investor from KKR, and we came together around what we're good at. Is I'm good at helping companies. He's good at identifying companies that need help. Richard, who's my other partner, is really, really good at the processes for raising funds and structuring it for excellence. And so we came together where integrum means complete. The actual literal translation is complete. And we realized that him alone, Tagar, him alone, Richard, me alone, Ursula, would not, which is the way most of these things start, 3 Ursulas or 3 Tagars or 3 Richards, that it would be better if we had the 3 of us together, and probably we'd become a better single human, right? A single better private equity firm if we came together. And so we want to do that. We want to diversify everything that we do. We want to not only race and gender, but it's also background, way of thinking. We want to diversify our supply chain. We're not necessarily going to invest in like only diverse companies, not at all, not at all. But once we're in the company, we want them to understand that diversity, how to future ready your business, how to make sure that your company is ready for the great opportunities of the world in the future. And one of the ways to do that is to assure that we are diverse, equitable, and inclusive. And so Integrum is about doing a proven method in a different way, a proven business in a different way.
Well, I cannot wait to see what you guys do. And we're coming towards the end of the time, so I'm going to try and squeeze in 2 last quick thoughts. Okay. One of the great pleasures of reading your book is you have worked with so many impressive leaders across your career, and you're very explicit about how that's helped you. I'd love you to share a story about one of these interactions that you think helps bring to life what inclusive leadership looks like.
I'll do one with a man who I admire a lot, who just passed away. His name is Vernon Jordan. And Vernon Jordan, civil rights leader, business leader, friend, advisor to presidents. He's the massive man. And I met him in 1991. I was literally a baby in 1991 in business. I was the assistant to the chairman and CEO, literally, not the secretary, but the assistant. I used to get the papers, make sure everything was in place, make sure he was prepared. He met me in the hallway of the headquarters of Xerox, and from that day until the day he died, this guy paid attention to me in a way that was complete, if you know what I mean. He was concerned about me as an individual, about me with my family, about me and my business, about everything about me. And in such a way that it was such a seamless level of advice and counsel. It was so easy to kind of take it in. There was never defensiveness around it. I tried the best leader that you can be should have a couple of these people that you're taking care of that way. You got to help everybody, right? As the CEO of the Royal Academy, you can't have favorites, but in the world somewhere are people who you will make them better human beings by being a complete advisor to them. Not just about this deal or this relationship. It's literally keeping an eye on the entire journey and making sure that the person is right on the journey. This person was not perfect at all. He had a lot of, but he was amazing in this way. And he was totally.
To be really seen by someone you respect is immensely powerful, isn't it?
It is amazingly powerful. It is, the way that you just said it is perfect. To be seen completely by somebody that you respect. It's sometimes, it's like, wow, I wonder why. What did I do to do? How am I here? But over time, you get comfortable with the fact that you deserve to be there, and that this person is helping you to get there. And then you realize how much of a responsibility you have. My mother's saying, leave behind in everything more than you take away. So relationships, and Vernon did that. My mother laid the foundation of everything, and then I had these people, like I said, help. He was amazing at that.
That is beautiful, and I can feel the emotion in that. I'm going to throw in one last quick question, which is, there are a lot of people listening to you who come from all parts of business, the world of tech, and what is it that you would like them to walk away thinking when they finish listening to this interview?
That, first of all, nothing is a foregone conclusion. It's really important to slow down and thinking about this. Nothing is a foregone conclusion. Death, maybe.
Yeah.
And if you have that frame of mind and a good heart, which I think most people do have a good heart, we can affect positively the outcomes in the world. We can do this if we get out of our own damn way. We see what's happening to the planet. So we gotta, we're fighting about who caused it. Let's just, nothing is a foregone conclusion. Smart people with good hearts can help. And engineers are at the heart of this. Fix it. Think about every problem we have: potable water, friggin' the climate, everything, energy. It's all about this field that's kind of not sexy. And so nothing is a foregone conclusion. We can change it. We can change it for the better. And I think that the last is we have to get to it. We can't, this idea that what you're going to do is, I hear this a lot, I'm going to get settled and then I'll help. I'm going to make sure, it's kind of like people saying, I don't want to get married until I'm fully set. I'm like, that's the worst time to get married. Get married when you get. So,
the risky strategy.
It's a pretty risky strategy. I say we can help here.
Yeah.
It's not a foregone conclusion that we're going to boil up or burn down. It's not a foregone conclusion that women are going to always be X, that blacks are going to have to be separate, that, whatever. It's not a foregone conclusion. Let us do something together to make it a little bit better every single day.
Ursula, it has been the biggest honor and pleasure to be in conversation with you. Thank you so much. You have been so honest. You've given us great insights, personal reflections, and some good provocations, I think, too. So thank you so very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And it's really good to meet you. And finally, and to be kind of like embraced by the Royal Academy. It's kind of like honorable to be called a Royal Academy of Engineering member. So I'm happy about it.
The honor is all ours.